This side event is focused on the National SDG Tracker. My name is Arman Bidar Bakhnia. I'm working with the Statistics Division of ESCAP, and I have the privilege to facilitate the side event together with two other colleagues. Christopher Ryan is the statistician of ESCAP in the Pacific office, and Dayan Shayani is a statistician in the Statistics Division of ESCAP here in Bangkok. And we have the honor also to have two speakers sharing the experience from countries. Dr. Horaini Huraira, Special Coordination Committee for Sustainable Development Goals in Brunei Darussalam, will share experience from Brunei. And Ms. Mele Taumeo, Assistant Government Statistician, Statistical Coordination Program of Tonga, will share the experience from Tonga government. So I will just walk you through a few information about what we are going to discuss and what is the main topic of our meeting today. We would like to address a few questions in the next hour. In assessing our national SDG progress in Asia and the Pacific, we would like to know who should be involved in the process. We want to investigate what are the criteria for selecting our indicators, and also the importance of setting target values at the country level and how to set those target values. And finally, when we are implementing National SDG Tracker, who owns the data and the results and how those should be used. Since the adoption of the 2030 agenda, like everywhere in the world, Asia-Pacific countries have been trying to assess their progress against the SDGs at the country level. And increasingly, we have realized that countries would like to use their own indicators, use their own data, and set their own targets to make the results more meaningful to their own policy prioritization. And that's why ESCAP developed an analytical tool called National SDG Tracker, which is allowing countries to do so. They can basically customize the list of indicators. They add their own data points. They can remove indicators that are not particularly relevant to their context. And also it enables them to basically set their own national targets before they assess the progress. You can access National SDG Tracker through these links provided on the screen. But our discussion today will focus on a few examples from countries, how they have been using it, how it has been useful, and what is their plan in the future, but also answering a few technical questions you might have. So what in the end, after implementing SDG Tracker, you get out of it? It provides you with two different visualizations. One is a snapshot of the SDGs that shows how much progress you have made so far against all of the 17 goals. Another one is a dashboard of the target SDG 116 and SDG targets, which shows whether you will achieve the targets by 2030 if you continue your business as usual. Now, I'll stop here and would like to invite our first speaker sharing a national experience, Dr. Horaini Huraira from Brunei Darussalam. Dr. Horaini, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Arman, and a very good afternoon, everyone, and very warm greetings from Brunei Darussalam. I want to firstly thank you for the honor of presenting and sharing our experiences using the SDG Tracker. So I'm here today as well with a representative from our NSO, Amani from the Acting Director of Statistics from the Department of Statistics, and as well as colleagues from the National Coordination Committee for SDGs. Could I just check my slides are up?
Just a few seconds there. Yes, we can see your slide.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so next slide, please. So just a brief mention of how we actually started with the project, the National SDG Tracker. Drawing from lessons from our 2020 VNR, our submission, Brunei Darussalam made plans to strengthen key aspects of SDG implementation, and one of them in particular, of which was a particular concern, was strengthening the use of data, and as well as decision making and the actions that were required that came off from the data, looking at the data and the statistics, and of course progress on the indicators. From that, we sought assistance from colleagues and ESCAP, and allow me to recognize the work done by ESCAP, especially Ricardo, Arman, Diane, and many and others as well, almost to ease our fears, whether they were rational or irrational. But essentially, they were very useful in guiding us and taking us through the steps that we would require to actually embark on this project. And the technical assistance that was extended to us actually saw the project begin in January 2020 of this year, where we actually decided that we will be using the SDG Tracker to track progress on the SDGs. And the main mechanism of which this would happen is by the SDG Technical Working Group, which would essentially is the main means from all the mechanisms for implementation of the SDGs, just to make sure that we had the right people, the right mechanism to actually make sure that the work was being done. So this project is jointly led by the Special National Coordination Committee for SDGs at the Prime Minister's Office in Brunei Darussalam, the Department of Statistics from the Department of Planning, Economic Planning and Statistics from the Ministry of Finance and Economy, and it's, as I mentioned just now, it's supported by ESCAP. Next slide, please. So just taking you through the journey so far. So we're still in the journey. We haven't yet completed the full cycle, but we're beginning to see a lot of positive and a lot of great progress in terms of how we've actually moved in just we're already in, we're approaching September now, but just in the 9 months that we've actually been doing this project. So it follows through a 6-step process from initiation. We spent a lot of time actually reviewing, and the second step was actually we spent a lot of time reviewing, validating the SDG indicators with our line ministries. We also are in the process of setting target values. And this has actually done in collaboration with the line ministries as well. We will then be looking at implementing on the tracker, i.e. moving the data into the tracker itself, followed by verifying results and launching and publishing the results on the SDG dashboard itself. A lot of the work that is done through collaborative partnership. That means in terms of ownership, although we coordinate the project, I think we are very strong in emphasizing that the work happens together. So it's a collaborative partnership between SDG National Committee, between the Department of Statistics, ESCAP, and also the line ministries. And a lot of the work is done through a series of plenary sessions, bilateral sessions, if and when they need it, and also discussions. So a lot of one-to-one discussions that were happening as well. So I'd like to just spend some time to talk about some of the challenges that we've had in this project, and bringing the real sense of how it's actually happened, as well as some of the lessons which we've learned. I think the first challenge that we had, and I think colleagues from ESCAP would remember this, was actually trying to secure the buy-ins. We were dealing with a lot of line ministries that were quite honestly just collecting the data just for the sake of collecting the data. And they didn't have a sense of being part of this bigger picture. They didn't really have a sense of togetherness and contributing to the SDG journey. And the great thing about this project is that what we saw was that this is starting to break. It's starting to actually create that awareness and create those buy-ins, which is what we've been actually wanting for. Part of what has happened was because there were varying degrees within the line ministries of engagement, of understanding and commitment. So some line ministries were very used to reporting to international bodies. They were very used to looking at data. They knew what they were doing, the administrative data. They knew how to process. They knew the statistics and the indicators that were related to it. But all ministries were different. So we had to deal some were moving at a rabbit speed and some were moving at turtle speed. So we had to pace ourselves so that it would be well suited to the requirements of the line ministries themselves. And of course, one of the major limitations, and this actually is probably what we still struggle with, is in terms of data limitations and the capacity gaps. And particularly the understanding, the most important component of strengthening data. And we're struggling with even simple things like administrative data, which is a strong, well, it's a weak point for most line ministries, especially in terms of either organization, either collecting of that data. So it's different weak points at different points that we've had to tackle with, and I'm sure other countries would have dealt with something similar. The lessons that we've had is that, I'll repeat it again because it's such an important point, is that buy-ins is key. It's important to make sure that us, when we have those conversations as a national coordination committee, that buy-ins is key, that they're in this journey together. And as I've said just now, a lot of the emphasis is on this collaborative effort and what we have to do together. And because of that, I think it started to create this ripple effect where everyone wants to get involved. Everyone sort of sees the bigger picture now. The next point there, the lesson that we've learned, is about multi-level involvement. And this doesn't only involve within ministries, but it also, we began to see synergies happen within the line ministries itself. So there were now conversations happening within ministries, which would help them actually push forward very data-driven conversations. So it wasn't just, somebody else would be collecting it, somebody would be analyzing it, somebody would be making conversations. And we started to see a fluid relationship build up within the line ministries itself. And the other lesson which we've learned is that, we really appreciate the value of capacity building through regional and international cooperation. I mean, I would say out here that a lot of the support that we've had and almost a confidence in actually implementing this project came from the conversations that we've had with our ESCAP friends as well. So finally, just a simple slide just to show some of the data, other things that we'd like to share about the SDG Tracker, although we're sort of in the midway point at the moment in terms of the implementation of the data of the SDG Tracker, but we're starting to see the benefits in several things. One of the things is that the benefits of having data visualization. I think I can say out here that I'm very excited to see, and I can't wait to see the generation of all those reports and all of those dashboards when we actually finalize all the data. So that's a real plus point for us. The second one is in terms of action and steering. more solid conversations, I think, have happened because the fact that we can actually see where we are progressing and see how much we need to progress and see where we are digressing as well, what the actions needed for that. It also provides us timely management of the data, where we can actually, manage all of the indicators on one platform. It's user friendly, and we're looking forward to actually being able to generate the reports, especially hopefully be ready for when we report on our second VNR for next year. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harani, for your very interesting presentation. I'm sure there are lots of questions, but before we come to question and answer, coming back to you, I would like to invite Ms. Mela from Tonga to also share with us experience of Tonga and then move to a Q&A session. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank the ESCAP for this opportunity to present, and I'd like to thank you all esteemed listeners for your time. I'll be presenting on this. Brene has basically mentioned everything that I wanted to talk about, but I'll carry on with my tale. What I'll be talking about is a simple tale of Tonga, our SDG indicators, and why we're working together with ESCAP to utilize the National SDG Tracker for Tonga. The current situation, I'm first going to talk about the current situation of the indicators, but my tale starts in 2019. That's when Tonga presented its first and latest VNR. And from 2019, the activity we did in regards to the indicators is that the Tonga Statistics Department and the National Planning Office got together and consolidated a data indicator list for the SDGs that's contextualized and important for Tonga. We did this by working together with Allied Ministries and these two offices. What we discovered when we got this indicator list, and then we got together a whole of government approach to write the VNR, is that while we do have indicators and numbers, but the stories that the ministries wanted to tell, there's a lot more stories and a lot less numbers. But we thought this is a good starting place. We'll use the momentum of the VNR that after 2019 we'll come back and work together in regards to getting more indicators on board, and all the ministries, all the stakeholders have identified the importance of the data of Tonga Statistics Department when it comes to indicators. But what happened was that in 2020 our border closed because of COVID-19. Our border just opened up last month. During that time period, we had 3 big, huge national disasters that affected Tonga. So the momentum from the VNR, it stopped. Ministries and agencies were more focused on trying to recover. They were more focused on trying to perform their other operational duties, and the trying to work together in a national statistical system was forgotten. So the challenges, what I'm very happy about when I came and joined the dialogue on Monday, and the dialogue we just finished, is that the challenges we faced is the same challenges that it seems like all statistics departments are facing. I looked around, I tried to find someone that has the same characteristics as my country. I come from a country, our total population is 100,000. I've still yet to find anybody that could match me on that. But it seems like even the more developed countries and the ones with more population, we have the same challenges. But I focused on my presentation on the ones in regards to producing indicators and targets. For Tonga, now that we're trying again to focus on indicators, the challenge that came up is for national planning. They're the ones that map and align the frameworks and to get the indicators from. There was just many different frameworks to monitor. They couldn't take out all the indicators. There's increasing demands with COVID and our disasters that happen. There's new thematic areas that people want data on, but the demands increased, but the resources, the manpower and everything remained the same, and even in some cases decreased. siloed approaches. When ministries have a target indicator or so, they just go out and do it by themselves. They didn't realize there's actually a national statistical system they can utilize. The numbers would already be there, but they didn't realize that. So everybody took a siloed approach to trying to get their own indicators and setting their own targets. And there was no national coordination of the statistical system. So currently, in just the last month itself, the statistics department finally has a statistical coordination team that can lead the national statistical system. So basically, in the last month to now, what we've done is try to advocate using official statistics for policy making. Some entities just generate their own numbers, and from those numbers, they use it for their policy making. So we're trying to advocate, use the numbers from the statistics department. In some national surveys and indicators, we're trying to advocate these things need to come through the statistics department as a clearinghouse instead of they just releasing the numbers as national figures. So basically what we're trying to do in the last month and a half is just trying to advocate for the national statistical system. So for the long-term plan is this right now, Tonga is transitioning into a more data-driven approach to policy making. There are multiple surveys and survey requests. There are more demands for data. But this is good, but the problem is with these more demands and everything, other entities are stepping up. In the last month or two alone, there has been 4 surveys hitting same households. And in these 4 surveys, only 1 was ours. See, so these things, this transitioning period is great for the statistics department because we think this is a vehicle we can go with to strengthen a statistical office presence in the nation, and in that way coordinate a more effective national statistical system. All actors in the system contribute and use numbers, the same numbers, no more silos. A national indicator dashboard where all can access, thus when it comes to indicators, nationally we all know who is doing what and when. So that brings me to our experience thus far with the National SDG Tracker. In Tonga, we don't have any visuals of our progress towards the SDGs. So we thought this would be a good tool to use because visuals, like Brene has said, visuals are great. If we could use the tracker to track Tonga's national progress to begin with and provide dashboards of the results and give it out to all stakeholders of the national statistical system, we think this is a good way to get on board this transitioning period and just strengthen what we're trying to do. So that's it from Tonga. Malo.
Thanks very much, Mela, for interesting presentation. Now we have some time for question and answer. If you have questions for Dr. Horaini or for Ms. Mele, please either you can post your question in the chat if you're attending online, or you can use mic if you're in the room. Yes, Rachel.
Thank you. I mean, it's really fascinating hearing these different examples, but I just wondered, particularly in Tonga, given you've said your population's 200,000, have you managed to kind of, reduce the set of kind of the data demands? Because clearly with a population that size, you can't kind of collect data on perhaps all 232 SDG indicators. Have you kind of prioritized? Have you kind of got the ones which you would see as being really important? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, so for the VNR, what we did, we sort of narrowed it down to 69 indicators, but it climbed from there. But yes, we had picked the ones that's contextual for Tonga, and it came down to 69. But as time went, it grew.
Thank you very much. Shaila, please.
Very nice presentations, Mela and Ms. Surani. I just wanted to know from both of you, actually, once you have started building on your national indicator framework, do you have a comprehensive set of indicators now in the national indicator framework, or you're working on some of them and you plan to build on them later? This is one question. And if yes, do you have a continuous plan? Administrative data, of course, will come as and when you get it through your administrative records. Have you planned something for the indicators where data is not available through surveys? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me repeat the question if you couldn't hear clearly. So it has two parts. One is to finalize your set of indicators. Did you already have a final set of indicators to use in your national context, or you have started with a set which basically you are building on, and as you move on, you are basically revising the question, the indicator list? The second part of the question was, how are you dealing with the data gap? Are you having any plans to basically fill the data gap for those indicators you don't have at the moment? And maybe we can start with Dr. Horaini online.
All right, I'll try. Okay, thank you very much for the question. Very honored to be sharing this platform with friend from Tonga as well, and thank you very much for sharing your experience. So I think we have almost a similar experience in that out of the many indicators, the SDG indicators that we actually were going through, we picked out those, or we actually checked to see that those were contextually relevant to Brunei Darussalam, and we're still doing that process at the moment. So what happens within the National Coordination Committee is that this set of indicators actually gets approved on a regular basis. So we have one set of national indicators which we're trying to get through for approval from the National SDG Committee. But because of the review, we will always revisit those set of indicators just to make sure that we're actually ready and relevant towards what we're intending to measure. So the second question with regards to data gaps, and I'm sure colleagues on ESCAP we've actually struggled with a lot of issues or questions on these data gaps. Wherever possible, we will try to find the best measure, which is closest as possible to what the indicators aim to capture. Where in places where this isn't possible, we try to get the closest proxy measure. So in the most simplest answer, we try our best to get whatever is more relevant to that indicator, and which will help us answer the question is, how are we doing, or how are we progressing in this particular SDG goal? So I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. Very clear. Thank you. Mela, would you like to reflect on that? Okay, that was you sharing the same answer. That's great. Any other questions? If not, we still have more time to ask questions from Brunei and Tonga, but I would like now to hand over to Chris.
Okay, thanks very much, Ahmed, and good afternoon, everyone. So I just want to talk about a couple of aspects about the National SDG Tracker tool. But to start with, firstly, what the tool does, which makes it fantastic, it does all the computations for you when it comes to measuring progress towards the SDGs at your country level. So, and as Ahmed's already shown you, it can do this at the goal level and it can do it at the target level. So that's all done for you. What's not done for you is the selection of the indicators, which you include at the national level, and also the setting of the targets. So with the indicators, for those who have used the tool, you'll know you start off with the global SDG indicators, and it's your role to tweak that indicator framework, which could involve removing indicators, modifying indicators, or adding indicators. And this is a task which the user needs to do. Also on the target front, it's important that you modify each of the targets to make them nationally relevant for you. And you'll obviously need to do this for any indicators you add of your own from your own national set, but you also need to look at the global SDG indicators as well, because the targets that are in the SDG framework have been set at the global sort of level. So they might not be overly relevant for a country at the national level. So all indicators that end up in the tool need to have their targets reviewed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a couple of slides on one on each of those issues of selecting the indicators and setting the targets. I'm just going to run through a few quick tips on each and then hand back to the audience to hear a little bit more about what your countries are doing in this space. And before I jump into that, I just want to point out that what I'm going to go through with regards to selecting these indicators and setting targets, this is not just an issue for the National SDG Tracker. This is an issue for anyone who wants to develop some sort of national SDG indicator framework and monitor progress of that with targets. So, oops, I'm clicking. Isn't this one? Oh, I knew I'd go the wrong way. All right, so I'm going to start off with the selection of finalising the national SDG indicators, and I'm going to go through these quickly because we do want to hear more from you than from us. So the first tip, and this has already come up very clear in the presentation by Brunei and also from Tonga, and it's the importance in involving all the key stakeholders in the process of selecting the indicators. I mean, and we're referring mostly to the line ministries here. You have to remember these people are the subject matter experts. So whilst they may not understand indicators well as the staff within the NSO, they do know the issues best within their respective sectors. And they also know what data may or may not be available from within their own line ministries. So the more you can involve the line ministries, the better. I mean, a little bit further down the slide, I'll sort of jump ahead a little bit. I've got a little dot point there about sound data flows. Well, processes are in place. And that's referring to this issue which comes up all the time from NSOs about the troubles that they encounter with trying to obtain data from the line ministries in order to produce a lot of these indicators. Now, a key point to make here is the more you can involve the line ministries in the process of selecting the indicators that go into the framework and have them on board at the start of this process, it's going to be a lot easier to then work with them in collecting that data from them as time goes on. So we can't emphasize this first point enough. The second one is, especially when you're looking at trying to identify what additional indicators you could include in the tool beyond those global ones. I mean, tap into what existing indicator frameworks already exist. And there's a lot there, especially at the national level. Most of you have national plans with national indicator frameworks and sector plans with indicator frameworks and so forth. So tap into those frameworks as much as possible to identify indicators. Also think through the process about how you're going to, or what sort of description you're going to give to these indicators. And the best way to tackle that is through metadata. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of metadata for your own national indicators. There's very good examples of what it can look like with the SDGs. Also, the last point there, with the actual tracker itself, I mean, as I said, you start off with the global SDG indicators, and you do have the option to remove some of these indicators if you don't feel they're relevant, but most of these indicators are highly relevant to your country, and nearly all of them are. So only remove the global SDG indicators if they have no relevance, because all you're doing is taking away information which can help you monitor progress against the SDGs. I'm going to move a bit quicker now. So am I on the target? Yeah. Okay. So on the target setting, once again, similar sort of tips. I mean, who should be involved in target setting? This is normally a little bit higher level sort of process. When we're setting targets, we're making statements about where our line ministries think we should be down the track. So, I mean, even going as high as minister involvement in this process should take place. The different sort of approaches that you can adopt, there's numerous approaches out there, and unfortunately there's no one approach fits all. So that the best guidance we can give you here is just have a look at or trial some of the different ones. And I've got some examples there, like you can look at global regional targets, past national trends, neighbouring countries, progress. Play around with all of it and come up with the target which makes most sense for that indicator. Do be transparent about it. Document the process you're adopting. You don't often see this, but it should happen a little bit more. And you should be able to defend the choice of target. And finally, an important point is when setting targets, do challenge yourself, but not in an unrealistic sense. I mean, I think some people would realise that some of the targets in the SDGs are a little bit overly ambitious. So you might not need to follow that trend, but do still challenge yourself as much as possible. All right, so that's where I'm just going to wrap that up there. It's just a few little tips on both those aspects of indicator selection and target setting. So what we'd like to do is I've just got these questions to ask for the audience, just to hear a little bit about from some of the other countries. We've heard from Brunei and we've heard from Tonga. And even if you're not adopting the tracker, what are you doing in this sort of space when it comes to identifying national SDG indicators? I mean, who's involved and so forth in the process, as well as the targets. And if I may, I'd like to just kick things off by reaching out to my colleague in Fiji, who Fiji are undertaking their VNR, their second VNR next year. And as part of this process, they're looking to adopt the National SDG Tracker and undertake a lot of these activities over the coming months. So, Maria, if you would be kind enough to just kick things off with a little bit of a update on what's happening in Fiji, please.
Thank you, Chris. So for Fiji, it produced its first VNR in 2019, comprehensively assessing the progress of the country and in identifying which strategies have proven effective and which are less efficient. The review also looked beyond the scope of government, the programs that it's trying to do. So the VNR report process brought the realization on the need to extensively elevate SDG data recording mechanisms, which requires strengthening institutional arrangement between line ministries, whereby reporting mechanisms needed to be streamlined. So Fiji anticipates to present its second VNR to the HLPF in 2023, which is next year. So with the assistance of ESCAP and the launch of the SDG Tracker in 2021, there is now a platform to record and track the progress of SDGs at the national level. So work currently being done is to in developing a national SDG indicator framework, and plans is to engage all line ministries through their VNR technical working groups to develop these indicators. So on July this year, a memorandum was sent from the Ministry of Economy to respective line ministries for the nomination of senior officials towards establishing this SDG technical working group. So they will be responsible for providing factual information pertaining to the implementation of SDGs relevant to their respective line ministries. In assessing the national SDG progress, and after this expert dialogue, the department, in consultation with ESCAP, UNICEF, and the ministry, will fine-tune its work processes and refine its selection as per reporting with respect to indicators based on availability of information. The reason why I mentioned UNICEF is the fact that there's now an interactive dashboard on the FPOS website for ease of finding information, and also the Fiji Mix 2021 key findings and the snapshot report was launched this month on the 4th. And a key objective in conducting Mix in Fiji was to generate internationally comparable data for assessment of progress made in various areas, and put additional efforts in those areas that require more attention. So there are many indicators that are being produced for the first time, of which there is now a benchmark. Hence, Fiji looks forward to conducting Mix Plus pretty soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria, for that very comprehensive overview of what's happening at Fiji. I mean, there's a lot going on there, especially with the the VNR coming up next year. We've got probably only about 2 or 3 minutes because we've got another little session we want to talk through in a sec, but it'd be great to hear from any other countries. I mean, you can pick anything on the selection of indicators or how you're going about setting targets, just some of your own experiences, whether or not, as I said, doesn't matter if you're not using the tracker tool, all your countries are doing this, and it is a bit of a challenging exercise. So if any other countries would like to share some of their experiences in this space. You get a free sandwich at the end if you... Yes, thank you.
So in Mongolia, we have 131 SDG indicators available at the moment. And we have also this Vision 2050, the long-term development plan. It has its own targets. And recently, together with the Ministry of Economic Development and the UN resident coordinator, we have drafted national SDG targets, and it has been adopted by the government cabinet meeting. And after that, we are now working with the UN resident coordinator office and also the Ministry of Economic Development on helping the NSO to prioritize the SDG indicators availability, so that we can have more funding available from the government side on the estimation of the SDG indicators, as well as the coordination from the UN resident coordinator, for example, like UNICEF or the UNFPA. We're going to have this, integrated coordination to be available. I think we decided it could be the best strategy for us to move on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's very encouraging to hear the role that the UN Coordination Office are playing in this activity. It's the best way to get the best support from a range of UN agencies when they're involved. One last one, maybe. Don't have to. But yes, please.
Thank you, Chris. Let me share a little bit of experience of my country. As we know that SDG indicators are very diverse. They cannot be generated from a single source. Some indicators should have to be generated from the admin data. Some indicators would have to be generated from the census or surveys, and some indicators even may have to rely on some specific studies. Considering this fact, in my country, the National Planning Commission is leading this process, where almost all, may not be all, but almost all ministries who deal with the data, they are invited in this consultation process, and then the departments, as well as some of the civil society members, because they also have some stakeholder on some of the indicators. That's why the process is almost consultative process at different levels, from local level, provincial level to national level. And then indicators are first listed, and then the relevance is checked. If data are really available, and then what is the importance of those indicators for our country. For example, the life below water, the goal 14, that's not relevant to my country. That's why we decided not to take it. There are some other indicators as well, which has not been taken into the national indicator framework. But there are so many national indicators which has been added beyond those international SDG indicators. In that way, the system is working. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Yeah, we better move along. We've only got 10 minutes, so I'll hand over to my colleague Diane, who will take you through some of the more technical elements of the tool.
Thank you, Chris. So my name is Diane, and when I'm not announcing the lunchtime and the side events, I do something else that I love a lot, which is analyzing data. And so as you heard already about the SDG Tracker, it's one of my favorite projects in ESCAP. And I put together some of the questions that people usually ask about it, and I try to answer them. But also, I would like to hear any questions you may have, and we can open the floor after this. So the first question is whether there's any cost or any need for IT infrastructure to run this program. And the answer is no. Actually, the tracker is a free service that's provided by ESCAP. So the application actually is in the ESCAP servers. And so whenever you access it, you're given an account, and then you're able to do all the work online. You don't have to download or install anything. The second question is about where the data is stored and who has access to it. So the data here is stored in the UN servers, but because we're talking about SDG data, most of it comes already from the global database, and it's normally public data. ESCAP creates individual accounts for the countries that will allow the country to add their own data and do the analysis. Only the users that have the account can access the results in the tracker. So basically, if two different countries are using tracker, they cannot see each other's data and results. So you can only see the results of your own country. Of course, the ESCAP staff has access to the system for maintenance and support and to help you along the process of analyzing SDG progress. Can the National SDG Tracker work as a data portal? That question we get very often, and unfortunately the answer is no. The tracker is just a tool that analyzes the data, but is not for publishing, not for disseminating the SDG data. However, ESCAP has some expertise in data portals, and we're happy to work with you if that's something that you're interested in. And finally, the last question is about the results. How can we publish them? Where do they go? And as you've seen the beautiful charts that Armand presented in the beginning, those can be embedded in your government's official website. Also, you can use them in reports and brochures. And we have example of countries that have also used this opportunity to hold events and to publicize the work that they do on the SDGs, as well as gathering support from international agencies around the SDGs. So now the floor is open for questions. If you have any about the SDG tracker and about the process of analyzing SDG progress and anything basically you would like to know more about it. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I just would like to ask with regard to the follow-up your question that you raised here. Currently, Cambodian national record system just been developed with the open SDG platform with assisted by UNSD through the SDG monitoring project. But the project was ended in July. However, we cannot bring the open SDG successfully online yet. And also regard that we currently been improving the data availability by adding more data value to the existing SDG framework. While among that, they already published and online through the another platform known as the Camstat data platform. But in that regard, we want to use a separate platform for the SDG, like you mentioned about the open SDG. So in that regard, whether the UN ESCAP can still connect the support since the UNSD project supported it was end, but we still need further support from the development partner to help us how to bring the data online, and also we plan to share with you those existing data to the regional ESCAP data platform, because the structure already apply the SDM API that can be easily to change and to exchange and share the information up to date. So in that regard, how we can work closely with you to continue to extend our SDG to bring to open platform, as well as to keep exchange the data between the regional to avoid the overlap respondent from the national office in terms of the filling up the questionnaire form by replacing to exchange through the API. Thank you.
Thank you for this question, Mr. Lei Chan. So the Open SDG platform is a data portal specialized on SDG indicators, and many of you are familiar. It is very interesting because it complements the SDG advocacy online with a very specialized kind of platform. Usually, if you need support in implementing that, there are many international agencies that can help you, and ESCAP is one of them that can support in that. I'd like to add that the SDG Tracker is an excellent addition when you already have Open SDG portal, because the results from the tracker, first of all, they depend on the SDG data that you already have in one place. So if you have all the indicators and the data, the only thing you are missing are the target values that Chris was mentioning. And so bringing together the target values, you have all the ingredients of the recipe to calculate the progress assessment. And then the results can then be published into the Open SDG platform as an additional analysis in the platform. I know at least one country that is planning to do that, so it will integrate the results into the Open SDG. I hope that answers your question. If my colleagues have anything to add.
Nothing to add, but perhaps this is the case for many countries, because a lot of countries either have adopted free platforms such as OpenSDG, or they have developed their own dissemination platforms. So the tracker is basically addition to that, is not duplicating. And it basically adds value to the data that is already disseminated on your OpenSDG or SDG platform. Visualizing it and basically providing you with a communication tool with the decision maker. We have 1 minute for one more question. If not, yes, we have two actually, or three. Maybe we can go to Thailand first. Sorry, Vietnam first, and then Alison.
I would like to ask, because in Vietnam, we also have a VSDG is the indicator for Vietnam, and it's around 200 indicators. And most of them are the national statistic indicator that's launched by Vietnam government. And so that we have a system to collect and disseminate the National Statistics Office. And I think this SDG Tracker is a very good example for disseminating data. But if we follow this, I think it will take time to do the to try for one indicator, one for National Statistics Office, one for SDG Tracker. So I would like to ask if you could, ESCAP could work with NSO to import SDG indicator from NSO system to SDG Tracker via automatically via API. So if you can do that, it will take the time shorter, and we don't have to do applicate work for one indicator. So it is clear question.
Thank you for your question. So if you have all the SDG indicators and data in one database or in one portal, then it's very easy to export them into the tracker. The only thing that you need more is really the target values for each one of the indicators. And that's perhaps the part that needs to involve a bit more of coordination. So the actual data processing of it is not very complicated. Also, I'd like to mention that normally when you do the progress assessment, because the SDG data doesn't come very often, and we normally do it once a year at the regional level. And we also recommend countries that want to do a progress assessment to also do it on a yearly basis. So once a year, you would collect the data, and for the first time, you need to set the target values. But for the second time, for example, which probably is the case of Philippines, that already done 2 progress assessments. On the second time, you already have the target values, you already have most of the data. You just need to add a bit more, and you have the results for that year. And that way you can follow the progress of the SDGs in your country very closely. So our team here in ESCAP, actually we have even more colleagues not present here, are very happy to work with your country, with any country in the region that is interested in this. And we'll find the best way to support you to produce your own progress assessment. Perhaps there was a question from Alison from SPC. Yes, we have maybe 1 or 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks very much, and thanks for the presentations and comments from the audience. My question is about where countries have made the effort to tweak the SDGs and add their national indicators. I imagine they would also be useful to other countries to understand what's been done and how the indicators have been changed. So I guess I'm just wondering, through the SDG tracker, is there a way for ESCAP to collate those modified indicators and perhaps have a little resource that countries could go to? Thanks.
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. That is something that SDG Tracker basically keeps track of what countries have customized in indicators. As more countries use the tracker, we will collect this paradata to basically analyze it later to better understand how countries actually customizing the SDG indicators. But that will requires more use of the tracker so that we have diverse kind of sample of users. Thank you very much. We have exhausted our 1 hour, given that we started a couple of minutes later. I will not try to wrap up myself. I really appreciate your contribution to the discussion. But since we have Director of a Statistics Division in the room, I would like to take this opportunity and invite Rachel to say a few words. And I also would like to thank you, Dr. Horaini online, who joined us today and presented your experience, as well as Mele from Tonga. Thank you so much. Rachel.
Just to echo the thanks, it's great to hear from countries about, what it's really like to deal with these issues. So that's fantastic. So thank you to everyone who shared, both from presenters but also participants. And just to remind everyone, 2 p.m. we're back for the final session of the committee itself, where we'll be looking at adopting the report. The report itself it's on the website. There are QR codes so you can download it. Do have a look at it and make sure you've read it before we get back at 2 p.m. And everybody who's an official participant and had the Kudo link should also have received the email. So do make sure you do that. And it just remains to be said, we've got lunch outside, but it's normally Diane that talks about all the fun stuff.
Yes, I'll take over from Diane.
I wanted to talk about the lunch.
Thank you, Rachel. So a light lunch is available outside the room. Sorry, participants online, we can't offer you lunch, but hopefully sometimes in the future we will meet. Dr. Horaini, I owe you a lunch. So hopefully we can meet soon and have lunch together. But others who are here, please have the refreshment outside the room. Thank you.